And I realize you're asking this question right before the 2024 election. And I think that will be definitely a gut check on where America is and what America is willing to tolerate. If we, especially recently, do decide to go with Trump and his very nihilistic view of the world and, frankly, America. I think that'll be a huge setback. I think that'll be a blow to the institutions of America. I think that'll be a blow to some of the things that really make us great and will probably hurt us and set us back. But I still don't think even 4 years, or I hope at least 4 years of even the worst president that could possibly be stop some of the core things that are true about America. And what's true about America is it is a country of great opportunity, of great diversity, and of great innovation. And I don't think any of that changes. I don't think it could change very rapidly. I think that America would have a bad decade when it would permanently give up some of the things that that I was speaking about, like the immigration, the diversity, the amount of many different people here with different ideas brings about an environment where the solutions and innovation that America is able to generate is unmatched. We have every single person in this melting pot. Like, we have someone from every single country here. All these ideas are mixing. We have mixed that with some of the best higher education systems in the world. And so we have an extremely high level of high attainment education in this country. And we are also a place of great business and innovation that drives our economic engine, even through the last couple years, where a lot of developed countries of similar economic status of us, have really struggled to grow their GDP, find ways to make more money, and lift more people's overall paychecks. America has had seemingly no problem with that. And I give that a lot to our growing young population, our innovation, and our diversity. I think that there's no reason to think that in the next decade that would change, that in 2034, that any of that would change permanently. I think that if there are innovations to be had in many different things in America, and I think that they will happen, and America will be the leader of those innovations. I think also that the institutions of America will be tested, especially if there is a Trump presidency. But I think Americans in general are a great, hardworking people and honest people, and it takes a long time for them sometimes to get past their fear. There's been in our history a lot of times where we've done some pretty awful things to groups of people, mostly out of fear and misunderstanding. But I also believe on the flip side of that is that there was also people that eventually the right view won out, and they fought for it, and many times they died for it. And I don't think that spirit in a lot of Americans has died out yet. And so I'm very, very hopeful that even if the worst were to come and we were to have an awful, hateful administration come into power, that there's enough good people in enough places to hold them accountable and hopefully right any wrongs that they try to do. I think the only threats to America long term are itself. I think Abraham Lincoln said that back in the 1860s, was that we are a completely untouchable nation. We have our own way of doing things. We have two oceans that defend us. We have all of the resources here that we need. And we have the ability to be a great nation pretty much until the end of time. The only thing that Americans should worry about is division. The only thing that they should worry about is hating their neighbor and worrying about their neighbor. I think a lot of nations also know that. I think that like nations you see it in their bot networks. You see it in the way that they talk about us. They talk about our racial divisions, our political divisions, our religious divisions, and that's because they know that that's the one thing that is also our strength and our Achilles heel, is that if you can get Americans to hate their neighbor more than they hate some of the more evil forces in the world that would spread more wars and hurt the democratic and free people of the world, then that's one way you can do that. You can play into America's isolationist streak. You can play into America's racist streak. You can play into their xenophobia, their Islamophobia, their homophobia. All those things can be exacerbated and exploited like a boil and fester if they're allowed to. And Americans have to, and I hope at the end of this political season that Americans start to see that there's a lot more in common with each American that you have, and there's a lot of good and great Americans out there, and you don't need to be afraid of your neighbor. You don't need to be afraid of the immigrant or the migrant. You don't need to be afraid of anyone who speaks differently than you or practices a different religion, solely for that reason. But I think if America can get through that, I think it's going to be a great decade. I see nothing but better technologies, better medical care, better, just better lifestyles. I see a lot of good things happening socially when it comes to food, when it comes to like people wanting natural foods, people wanting to take care of their child in a less like screen-driven way and engage with their child more. Millennial fathers spend like 10 times more time with their kids than their Gen X fathers did. I mean, the next generation is going to have present wonderful fathers, and hopefully this really makes wonderful emotionally strong children. Just things like that. I think there's a lot of bad news out there and a lot of bad stories, but I don't think it's all bad. I think if you look around and really try to find some good, you can.
I haven't a clue, to be honest. I think, however, that what needs to happen in order to ensure that the United States is still here in 10 years, that both the man on the street as well as the people in power have to return to having some respect for the law and respect for each other and respect for the country as a whole. Two of my favorite quotes. One is from Ben Franklin, who said, "Those who would give up essential liberty for some temporary security deserve neither." And the other quote that I'm very fond of is by Thomas Jefferson, who said, "The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of both patriots and tyrants." And I think those two warnings, those two pieces of advice should be heeded in order for the country to still be around and still be what's considered America in 10 years.
Hol lesz Amerika 10 év múlva? 10 centiméterrel távolabb Európától? Lehet, hogy Amerika elkövetkezendő 10 évét nehezebb megjósolni, mint azt, hogy hol lesz 250 millió év múlva, amikor is Los Angeles a leszakadt kaliforniai félszigettel együtt immár szigetként úszik majd északra, Alaszka partjai felé. De visszatérve, ez egy rendkívül összetett kérdés, mert más lehet a válasz gazdasági, politikai, vagy kulturális tekintetben, ezért csak néhány gondolatot említenék meg. Ahogy én látom, közép-európai szemmel, Amerika 10 év múlva is a lehetőségek földje lesz, ahol nagyobb terep kaphatunk arra, hogy bárki bármiben kibontakozhasson. Sok meginterjú volt Amerikában dolgozó és alkotó közép-európai mondja, hogy annak, aki keményen dolgozni és előre jutni akar, annak van lehetősége. Tessék, dolgozz, mutasd meg, mit tudsz. Sokan állítják, hogy hazájukban maradva nem tudtak volna olyan sikereket elérni, olyan vállalkozásokat megvalósítani, mint amilyeneket Amerikában sikerült. A gazdasági területen a verseny például Kínával valószínűleg erősödni fog, például az elektromos autók terén Kína hatalmasat fejlődött, és a hagyományos autók eladása csökkent Kína irányába, ami természetesen Európa és Amerika is megérez, tehát a piac átrendeződése zajlik majd több területen is. Mindezek mellett a nagy mértékben a Covid időszaknak betudható infláción Amerika valószínűleg túljut, mivel az amerikai gazdaság az utóbbi években nagyon jól teljesített, például a GDP terén, ennek a hétköznapokban érezhető hatása azonban csak később jelentkezik, és pár év múlva az emberek a mindennapi vásárlásuk szintjén is érzékelni fogják a javulást, aminek hatására Amerika valószínűleg még vonzóbbá válhat. Végezetül Amerika szuperhatalom, tehát egyfajta globális felelőssége van, és lesz abban, hogy a világ folyamatai merre haladnak, mind politikai, mind gazdasági téren, és pont emiatt nem tudja megtenni, hogy ne legyen mindenütt jelen ma, 10 év múlva és azon túl is. Ez egy olyan globális felelősség, aminek tudatában kell lennie most és a jövőben is minden, éppen regnáló amerikai vezetésnek.
Wow, 10 years, that's a long time. Anything could really happen. It's anybody's guess. But I would hope that we would have, positive changes between now and then with the trending political climate. At this time, it's a little hard to be super optimistic, but I think, things tend to ebb and flow, and overall, I think, we have a positive, enjoyable life here in this country, even though there is a lot of room for improvement. So I would hope that it would be at least in the same realm, and ideally, a lot of positive changes for the next generation and beyond, so they can enjoy this country even more.
I just see it getting much, much worse. You could already see it today. I already don't feel like I have a place in this society. And on top of that, I'm told to kill my compassion. Like, I can say there's genocides happening worldwide, and it's like, okay, but you can't change that. So what are you gonna do? What jobs have you been looking for? And I just think that rhetoric is going to get much worse as time goes on. I think people will become more desperate for the lies and the cognitive dissonance that's happening everywhere. And it feels like those stories where you keep backing an animal into a corner and then you're surprised that the animal bites back. But our mountains are getting so insurmountable to beat those on top that we're quickly headed towards, in my opinion, a breaking point. And even then, no one seems to want to care or believe it. And it's frustrating. And it's going to be sad. It's going to get much worse before it gets better. 10 years, I think we'll be in our worst point. But in 20 to 30, 40 to 50, I just hope the right side is successful, the people who care about others. That's all that's kind of keeping me going, because it's already rough out here for everybody. If it's rough for me as just a white cis male chilling with compassion, I can't imagine what like people who are minorities or things are going through right now. So I don't know. Yeah, I think it's gonna get way worse. This is all just a preface to some real horrific stuff coming up.
The climate of the political state right now is worrisome. So I would like to believe that we'll make strides towards positivity, but I think that the way things are going and the way the politicians really don't care about, regular folks like us, I just think that, in 10 years, we will be worse off than we are now.
The biggest threat that I see looming on the horizon is the technocratic police state. In many ways, we are already in it. I won't belabor the point about smartphones and the internet being an addictive substance that has stolen all of our attention spans, but it obviously is, and it certainly has. And because of this, we are incredibly vulnerable to programming from corporate sponsors and state-backed entities. But beyond the advertising capacities this allows, we are left wide open to creeping militarism in our everyday lives. In the next 10 years, I foresee our online presence becoming attached to some sort of social credit system. I hate to even speak the name of this clown, but to me, Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter and now his participation in the presidential administration is an indication that this is on its way. He's already publicly stated that he'd like to see Twitter become the quote-unquote everything app, where our accounts essentially become our virtual wallets. And the sheer convenience of this would guarantee that millions of Americans would willingly link their personal financial stakes, along with a digital ID, to such an app. And from here, it's easy to forecast that what we now call censorship could actually take money directly out of our pockets. It would probably start on the inverse, though, with support of certain so-called philanthropic endeavors gaining you credits. However, saying something controversial online would put one's account on notice. And it's easy to hypothesize that after a few strikes, you could start seeing money be docked. Instead of an account being suspended, it would just be taxed. Underwriting this, I think, is the implementation of a universal basic income. As jobs continue to be lost to automation and soon artificial intelligences, the economy is still going to need consumers. And the way I see these wheels of commerce being greased is for participating citizens to receive a governmental stipend each month. Of course, there would be strings attached, where the money would only work when patronizing certain businesses and services, approved by the US government, of course. This is how they will offset the ever-decreasing spending power of the US dollar. This UBI, as they call it, this stipend would almost certainly be in the form of some sort of cryptocurrency. As the dollar continues to plummet, national banks and international finance networks are already backing crypto more and more. To be honest, I don't know much about how crypto works, but it seems obvious to me that no matter how resilient and impenetrable the blockchain is supposed to be, it'll always be able to be backdoored by intelligence agencies. And it is not hard to imagine the US slowly adopting crypto and de-emphasizing the greenback. Money is already mostly just digits on computer screens. But once this is formally adopted, there will be no end to the financial manipulations that we will all be subject to. The other shoe to drop on this technocratic police state is the actual militarized policing. In the next 10 years, I think state borders will become hardened in much the same way that, say, the border between the US and Mexico is. We are already seeing the beginnings of this with the implementation of the real IDs starting in 2025. Being a United States citizen will mean significantly less, and being a member of a given state will mean more. State legislators will try to define the rights within their borders in more extreme ways, leading to further interstate tensions. We've already been seeing this with abortion rights of late, but one can imagine states attempting to further distinguish themselves from their neighbors in unprecedented ways. Imagine what another pandemic would look like under these conditions. And I wouldn't be surprised if we do see another pandemic. Without getting into the weeds about what I personally think of COVID, I think it's safe to say that many Americans have suspected that the official narrative was a bunch of bullshit. I'm not necessarily saying it was explicitly planned, but I wouldn't rule it out either based on the enormous amount of money that was transferred upwards, or a select few profited immensely. And if we understand this, as I do, to be some sort of test run, the next public health scare will be far more dire. It is well publicized that Americans have been losing faith in once trusted institutions for decades now. As this faith continues to erode, I actually could see the rise of a third electoral party, believe it or not. However, this, of course, as with all electoral proceedings, will be carefully manicured and co-opted to the fullest extent possible. But it does seem that the effectiveness of a corporate-backed duopoly has run its course. I think that we will see a millennial president from a nascent third party. The goal of this hypothetical administration would appear to be somewhat radical, but it would never materialize as such. I think the point would be that a younger candidate running from a new party could be just the thing the electoral sponsors need to not only quell rising radicalism. I think this is the way they're going to try to re-engage the populace in this farcical American elections. On the cultural front, I can foresee something like film and the music industries being completely upended. How I see it is actors will be leasing their CGI likenesses more and more. And I'm not saying films as we know it will no longer exist, but I think with the emergence of AI, we will start seeing startups handle the rights to an actor's likeness to sell to up-and-coming filmmakers who will be able to generate feature-length films from chatbot prompts. For a couple $1,000s per minute, a YouTube streamer could automate a film with a coterie of Hollywood legends with just a few clicks of a mouse. These already hollow celebrities in Tinseltown can rake in money and never have to leave the comfort of their own homes. This goes for music too, as AI automated songs and stars will start to top the charts, and any wannabe producer can key in some lyrics and guidelines and out will pop the perfect 3-minute song to further stupefy audiences. As far as education goes, in a decade's time, I think college enrollment will be at an all-time low. Not only are the younger generations realizing that college is simply a for-profit racket, but kids will seldom be able to afford the outrageous costs and crippling loan payments. Instead, I actually think we will see online certifications become the norm. Even, let's imagine something like a YouTube University where your viewing habits can be accredited based on what you consume. Online schooling already essentially works like this, but I think the future will see college graduates viewed as naive dupes. And sure, the wealthiest amongst us may still attend Ivy League schools for the prestige and legacy of it, but most everyone else will graduate high school and soak up credits through online scrolling and answering of questionnaires. The United States of America has always been a sham. Only now is it that a critical mass of people are realizing it. And as such, all of our norms will be completely upended and converted into online incentive schemes. Of course, the military will continue to garner the majority of taxpayer dollars, and the U.S. will absolutely still be an imperial force wreaking havoc on the world over. Also, as part of the policing I mentioned earlier, I think we're going to see drones overhead in the skies instead of police in the next 10 years, and you won't be pulled over by car with flashing lights. It'll be some drone that disables your car's ability to move, and you will be stuck on the side of the road until you pay the required fines. I mean, a lot of these ideas seem possibly dystopian or something from sci-fi, but as I always say, like, sci-fi is just, it's things that haven't happened yet. It's all on the table, and I really wish I could predict a radical revolution that will supplant the current regimes and install civic-minded institutions for the overall betterment of humanity. At this point, I just don't see it. Even if people are realizing how hollow our founding myths are and how oppressive the government functions, it doesn't necessarily translate into action. In fact, people seem completely overwhelmed with this prospect and further retreat into online life. To be honest, I think we are fucked. But I still have hope. Hope that people will come around and keep realizing and keep radicalizing and, talking to people, educating people. The control mechanisms in our lives are, the facade is that it makes everything more convenient, but we're just giving away rights without a second thought. And I do like to think at some point people will realize this, but it seems people just rather continue on to vegetative states and keep clicking, keep scrolling, and not really ever do anything about these oppressive factors in our life. And yeah, it's kind of depressing, but I'm holding out hope. I'm gonna continue to do what I'm doing. Hope people come around with, education and just keep poking and prodding them. And so in 10 years and 20 years, I don't know, maybe we can topple this fucking government and make a better world. But for now, I think we're in for it.
10 years from now, honestly, I think it's going to continuously get worse progressively, but I'm really hoping that there's going to be something that brings the country together. It might have to be some type of extremely tragic event, which would be extremely awful, but hopefully it's nothing big like that. But with how things are going, with just like politics, just like how people are to other people that they don't even know, it's kind of scary just to think. And like one of my close friends, his dad's been in like the news industry for 30 plus years, and he said that when he got in, news outlets would give you both sides of whatever big media thing was going on, whether it be political or what have you. And now it's just they give you one-sided things instead of giving you both sides so you can make your own informed opinion. And now it's just they give you one side, and like it might be partially true, and like it might all be completely false, but it's completely divided the country. And I think it's progressively going to get worse, and it kind of makes me nervous. And like I don't think that there should be people just like disliking somebody because they think this idea is right and this idea is wrong. Like I think like it doesn't matter like if like you think one thing has to be this way and I think it's the other way. Like you and I are still extremely close friends, and like we might not see eye to eye on every single topic, but like it feels like that's how like the world is now. And like I think it's progressively going to continue like that until some big event happens where that brings us all together. And hopefully it's sooner rather than later, but like in 10 years I don't think it's going to be the best. I think the divide between like people that are rich, poor, and in the middle it's just going to continuously go away. And I feel like the middle class is just going to continuously go away as it has been for quite a while now. It's kind of nervous, like hearing friends that are struggling financially, and then like you see like how they're like trying so hard to like make it and all that. So like you obviously want your friends to do good, but then you also just think like you want the whole world to do good also and not struggle. And so I think it's still going to be like the financial divide is going to continue, but I don't have too positive an outlook on like what it's going to be like in 10 years, but obviously I hope that it's going to go well and like everything's going to be good and like everybody can like unite in some type of way. And that's what I'm just hoping for, but I don't see that happening.
United States 10 years from now is a scary thing to think about in a lot of ways. I don't think the climate is going to get any better. I think we're going to see stuff like we saw in Raleigh and stuff like that more and more. People are going to have to move. People are going to lose their homes and their jobs. And that no matter what happens in 10 years, that's going to be going on. The pessimistic part of me sees globally, not just in America, but scarily in America, the rise of like fascist tendencies and these sorts of politics that ignore what the real, like, or just anything generally true or whatever for the sake of, I mean, it just feels like the cruelty is the point, and it doesn't even seem like they have a goal there, but I see that getting worse. AI, misinformation, all that stuff making all of that worse. And I think that leads us to a scary place that is hard to come back from if it gets much worse than it is now. I see, I have friends who are teachers. I see kids who don't know how to read. I see kids who get all their information online from very dubious places who also, follow those tendencies, and that scares me. And I see that being a huge problem. But optimistically, I think there's still time right now in 2024, where we are right now, to reverse course on some of that stuff. I think that people are sometimes better than we give them credit for, than I give them credit for. And I think these things always come in waves. And I think that there is another reality where the youth snap out of this stuff. Like, we're seeing people face consequences finally for some of this grifting stuff, like Alex Jones and the Andrew Tates and all of them, like actually facing consequences and getting in trouble. And I think that you know, kids grow out of phases, edgelord crap, and so maybe it's not as doom and gloom as it seems. But no matter what, in 10 years, America is going to be a fucking weird place to live. I mean, it already is. I don't know. I don't have a definite answer, but I mean, I hope that it's the optimistic way and that things get better. This is a weird time to ask this question, like 3 weeks from an election that I feel like is going to have a lot to do with that. So I guess text me in 3 weeks and I'll update you. But I don't, my vision of the future isn't any clearer than anybody else's, but I don't know where we'll be in 10 years. I know it's going to be wherever we end up, it's going to be hard getting there. The road is going to be bumpy. And whether we go somewhere good or somewhere bad, it's going to suck a lot along the way. But hopefully, you know, people keep making community and helping each other out. And I don't know, we all get there in one piece. I don't know.
The United States is going to be in a bit of trouble. I think the gap between the US and China is going to close. I think AI is going to cause a huge disturbance in the workflow and in the political realm with things being fake. I think those are two of the big problems right now. I think also the US will scale back on its imperialism and try to focus within in order to fix problems that need to be fixing. I think inflation is going to rise. I think the middle class is going to get drowned out, and I think there's only going to be two classes, which is the wealthy and the poor. I think people that are in the working class are not going to be able to afford homes. I think they're all going to be owned by corporations by then. And everyone will have to rent and be at the mercy of the large corporations. I know that the large corporations have such a political influence in America that they steer policies, the economic checks and balances, and so much more. And that's always going to lean towards them. And the people that have to eat that disparity is the working class people. I think culturally, I think the U.S. will still be a presence, still be a formidable presence in the world. I think it will slightly go down with AI and people not making movies for themselves. They're making it for audiences now, and that's when art is lost. I think music America will still be dominant in. I think I'm biased in that. I think there's going to be a lot of discourse in America when it comes to not being able to buy a house, and it's going to be tougher to afford groceries for a family. I think the population of people having kids is going to decrease drastically. I don't think people are going to be having children like they were as of now, because they're not as of the past. I think people being social or being able to talk to one another is going to go down due to the technology in this world where you don't have to be in person anymore. You can just send messages. I think that's going to cause a huge problem within America. I think social media is going to amplify just the pain and the lies of humanity. And I think we're still learning how to control social media individually control social media for ourselves and be able to figure out what is real and what is not. And I think with AI in 10 years, I think that's going to become a huge problem politically and everything, especially with information warfare that other countries attack us with and we attack other countries with. I think that could really destabilize the United States, and that's really scary. On the optimistic side, we could still be the world leader. We can usher in a group of understanding and love and emphasis on creation, artwork, free trade, and helping people that are in need and getting people their paid fair share so they can have their basic needs met and then some.
I don't want to sound all doom and gloom, but in 10 years, I don't know if a lot of the people in this country will still be here, considering the leadership change that's happening right now and the way they've been propping things up for the next few generations. It seems like authoritarianism and fascism been chosen intentionally, and I don't know if it's like people are dumb or people are just angry and that vindictive just over somebody being different for some reason. But it just feels like we're repeating history in a slightly different way. Whether it's like Germany choosing Adolf Hitler for their leader, or like Rome crumbling under Nero and him setting it on fire. It just doesn't feel like there's a reason for us to be too optimistic about the next 10 years. Like, yay, stocks are pumping. Yay, crypto's pumping. But remember what happened 100 years ago? We had a whole decade of the stock market pumping. Then it just came crashing down. Maybe we'll get lucky and it'll crash and force everyone to get mad at the current government. I don't know, we might have another 1929 in 5 years. We might not be that lucky, though. If somehow they get rid of the term limits and this guy stays in office, we're pretty fucked. I might actually just leave the country. I don't think I'd be safe here. We already have government officials taking favors and bribes, choosing their own family and loyalists. It seems like corruption is spreading. I grew up in a kind of corrupt city already, probably one of the most corrupt cities. And if this one feels different, it feels more like the kind of corruption you see in Latin America, where it's just an everyday part of life and you're just expected to fucking deal with it or play the game or die. I'm not feeling too great about the whole thing. Who knows? Maybe he'll just defund the states and local governments he hates. He's definitely gonna try to fuck with California. It's like, quote unquote, the cool kid state, and we wanted nothing really to do with him, and he's mad about it. Hopefully that's just it. I don't know. I'm hoping reality is much more boring than my brain is making it.
When I think about what the United States will look like in 10 years, it's easy to be pessimistic. I'm recording this 2 days before the 2024 presidential election. I'm recording this just a few hours after Donald Trump said at a rally in Pennsylvania that this nation does not belong to them, it belongs to you. 2 nights ago, 10 acres of land near my house caught fire. When I first moved here to a small city in central New York, people told me it's a great place to live because it won't be affected too badly by climate change. We're away from the coast, we live near a large freshwater lake, and we're far enough to the north that it will remain a habitable zone even as temperatures rise. While this fire was small compared to those we've seen in California, Colorado, Paraguay, Brazil, and Australia over the last few years, it reveals that no place on Earth is immune from climate change. It reveals that anyone who believes they are beyond the reach of this disaster is wrong. It's easy to think of a future that looks like this, with demagogues trying to turn public fear against imagined enemies while forests and neighborhoods burn. Like I said, it's easy to be pessimistic, and I am pessimistic. But I'm not a defeatist. There are solutions, but they must be forged out of political, scientific, and social transformation. If we are to have a future at all, we have to refuse the idea that this nation belongs to anyone. We have to refuse to continue on a path of climate annihilation. We have to refuse a nation that exports destruction and confusion, one that privileges profits and power over human happiness. In a way, the future looks like it does now. It's a struggle for the control of the future.
United States, probably even worse inflation. That's the first thing that comes to mind. I think inflation's probably just going to get worse. Jobs will probably be even harder to come by. Got an overpopulated country going on here. Man, who even knows what the presidency will look like? I mean, but for the everyday American, I imagine it won't be too terribly different from today. Just, maybe a little more difficult. Have to live a little more frugally just because end stage capitalism is not all that, I suppose. Movies will be worse. The writing will continue to get worse, and then they'll incorporate AI. That will be much worse. Same with TV shows, video games. As they incorporate AI, everything's going to be generic and blur together. Hopefully the 49ers will have a Super Bowl. I know that doesn't have much to do with the question, but I just feel like it's relevant to say anyway. Let's see. I imagine all of our political options will just be famous people. Probably a bunch of YouTubers, podcast people that, give their dumbass opinions and then do something with that.
I came to America about 10 years ago, and in a way it was exactly what I expected, and in another way it was not at all what I expected. And since then, especially in an economic sense, things have continued to get worse. And I think this gradual decline has always been happening, but it feels like it's a lot faster now. And I think it will continue to happen, but the ways these things are, you might not notice as it's happening, but you'll just wake up one day and be like, oh shit, everything's so much worse than it was a decade ago, but I didn't even realize it was happening.
What will the United States be like 10 years from now? And as a historian, I think that my answer is that you won't really have a sense that things have changed all that much. I kind of see historical time, at least the way that we experience it in our lives, to operate in a similar way as, witnessing your partner or somebody that you know and love and see every day, witnessing them lose or gain weight. It's not something that you see every day. It's not something that you recognize. They feel it. It's happening, but it's not necessarily something that you see just because you're used to seeing them. You're living in it. So that as events emerge, as things change, you're kind of responding to it in those moments. It's only in retrospect where you can look back, like looking back from today, at, 2014 was in some ways a different world, but in some ways it's really similar to how it is today. But if the trajectories continue the way they are, then you could expect the contradictions of capitalism to get more intense than they already are. That is, for poverty to widen, for example, we'll just say wealth disparities to widen, to get wider in terms of economic disparity, but also in terms of class divisions. I think more people will be in under the poverty line than exists today. And so that's kind of one place that I would think. But in general, I think that the world kind of moves without us really, taking too much stock of it until we are old enough to look back retrospectively. So on the one hand, yeah, I think the wealth thing is one thing. I think there'll be more automation, especially in the workforce. There's a bigger urge to automate everything. I don't think that it's just capitalists that are pushing for that. There are people that work in robotics, for example, who firmly believe that automation is a good thing for workers in general, for everybody, for them creating this stuff. I think that politically, by 10 years, we should have a new generation of leaders in big positions. And it will be mostly Gen Xers. That is, if you're a millennial, your parents or your uncles or aunts or whoever, that generation will become kind of the major leadership, at least we hope. And that the Biden-Trump leadership will kind of be retired. We hope anyway. I think it's certain because I don't think you could be president at 90 years old or 100 years old, as Jimmy Carter is demonstrating. So a kind of changing of the guard generationally, but incrementally. And I do want to stress that these things are incremental. It's so incremental that we don't see it happening. Like I said, it's like your partner gaining weight. You live with them, you see them every day, you don't recognize the changes. It's not until you are able to step outside of the entire situation, and when you can finally look at it objectively and say, oh, I do notice now, but I didn't before, because but they say living in the shit,
You smiled when we parted, it hurt me somehow. I thought there was nothing worthwhile. The tables are turning and you're crying now, while I am just learning to smile. Who's sorry now? Who's sorry now? Whose heart is aching for breaking each vow? Who's sad and blue? Who's crying too? Just like I cried over you. Right to the end, just like a friend, I tried to warn you somehow.
President Yoon declared martial law. It's a heinous act to threaten the South Korean people committed by a very heinous man, and an act that will cost him everything. The National Assembly gathered to overturn the martial law declaration as it is written in the South Korean Constitution.